Let me. Oh, welcome to this episode. In today's episode, I have with me Ricardo Topete, videographer, photographer, dancer, and founder of Rico Media Productions, host of the Why We Move podcast. Ricardo transitioned from medicine to media and now helps brands tell powerful visual stories. Welcome, Ricardo.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Wisdom.
It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited to have a conversation here, you and I.
Yeah. Before we start talking about video and personal brand, I'd love to get to know, for my audience to get to know who they're listening to. And so the question I'd love to ask is, how did you start doing? How did you move from medicine to media?
It's a great question. So I have a little bit of a not so classic story. A lot of people, who are videographers, photographers, creatives in this field, they usually start out with, a camera that they found in their parents' basement, or maybe a camera that they bought when they were super young, and just always had a knack for photo, video, all that stuff. For me, it's a little bit different. I was in medicine before this. I was studying to be a doctor, which I then transitioned into becoming a physician assistant, got into school. I ended up not going completely, and then switched to nursing, and then finally dropped nursing to chase media. And all the while I was in medicine, I still had like this artistic part of me that wanted to be expressed. And I never knew that I could, because I was so, involved in school and the science, mathematical side of things, that I felt like I couldn't really bring creativity out of me. I could barely draw a stick figure, and I wouldn't necessarily consider myself artistic. And so, the right part of my brain with video came actually kind of organically. So it all started with dancing, and this is why I kind of talk about Why We Move with my story with media production. But Why We Move, my podcast about social dancing, is because I was originally a dancer, Latin style. So I danced salsa, bachata, kizomba, and zouk, and that was my first introduction into anything that was artistic or creative, and that really led the way, or paved the way rather, into video and photo. And I kind of like mixed the two in a sense, where I wanted to do photo and video for dancing, for traveling, for all kinds of other things. And then I just kind of fell into it, and obviously stopped doing medicine to chase this full time, and now I'm here. I
like the ride you just took us from medicine down to dance and down to media, video and photography, right?
Absolutely.
Before, just one final question I'd love to ask, and it's still on point of getting to know you. You've been working on video projects and photography projects, right? The question I want to ask is, what's the weirdest or most unexpected video project you worked on, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the most unexpected video project I've worked on has had to have been a documentary style piece that I did in Portland, Oregon, on the west coast of the United States. I think it has to have been like 3 years ago now, where I basically followed along a nonprofit organization who was doing lyric, poetry, and video production, actually classes and workshops for the youth in different after school programs. So it was a interesting one, because I was basically recording and documenting through my lens the classes and the workshops that were teaching the younger generation how to be me, basically how to do what I was doing. So in a weird way, it was kind of like an inception kind of thing, where I was teaching, where I was documenting the teaching of how to be me. And so, it was a very, very cool project that was able to impact a lot of kids, teach them what I knew, at the same time documenting it all.
Really exciting project. Wow. This story is really it's weird. It's weird, but not exactly weird. It's an exciting story. I understand it. Thank you for sharing that. Now that we've known, we've gotten a glimpse of who you are, and we'll dive into the topic about building a personal brand with video. So the first question I want to ask is, why do you think, because everybody's talking about how video is important for building a personal brand, why do you think video is a powerful tool for personal branding today?
That's a great question. I would say video is probably the closest you can get to understanding somebody digitally, because you get to see how they move, how they react, how they speak, you know, everything from body language to tone of voice and volume, and how they conduct themselves, or even just how they appear. It's a very big first impression sort of thing, you know, versus like a photo. Not to brag on photo, but photo is more still image. It's 2D in a way, and it's you can definitely tell a lot about somebody with a photo, but it really is ultimately captured by the photographer and manipulated by the photographer. Whereas video, there's a little bit less control in that sense, and however people appear in video, that's how they appear, pretty, at least hopefully pretty close to in real life, if they, you know, don't edit it or alter it as much.
Yeah. And so if I understand you clearly, it's like the best way to capture authenticity.
Absolutely. Yeah, great way to put it. Definitely.
Yeah.
That's why they call you wisdom.
The question I want to ask is, you know, a lot of creators, they've seen that, okay, video is like the new thing. It's trendy. It's important. It's very good to capture authenticity and the likes. Now, what do you see? You know, you work with a lot of creators and all that. What do you see as the biggest mistake people make when trying to use video for branding?
I think that's an interesting question, because it's hard to say that anything is really a mistake, because with video, you know, at the end of the day, it is art still. And so I think the best way I can answer this is kind of talking about the authentic approach, but more so in alignment. It's a problem with alignment. People tend to skew themselves in personal branding in ways that doesn't appear as themselves, or they almost, you know, for lack of better terms, try too hard. And I think people try to put out this image of themselves that doesn't align with their actual selves. And so when people, you know, with personal branding, when people are either looking for their service or hire them to do something that they, you know, are required, and see how they actually appear in real life, it's different than what they appear online. And so it ends up being a misalignment or a misinterpretation of that person. And so I think that's what people get wrong, is just missing the target when telling their personal brand in a way that is actually true and aligned, and not just because they want to look cool or whatever.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, for those who are using video, like, it's not necessarily the video, it's more like they've not gotten their messaging, they've not understood who they really stand for and what they really stand for, like their core beliefs and all that, and they end up trying to be someone else on video.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So they end up kind of missing the target. And even, you kind of brought up a good point there too about you know, the messaging. I think it's also a matter of having, like, trying things that just don't work in the sense of marketing, because there are things that, you know, people will create that they think people want to see, but it's really not that. And I think you learn that along the way. And, you know, perhaps another layer of what doesn't work in video, or what people get wrong with video, is that they stay with the same thing and they don't try new things.
Yeah, so true. Like, I'm just like taking some time for that to sink in. They don't try new things. And so if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is that it's more like it's more of a knowledge in terms of, okay, how to do it, this is the way to do it, rather than the video itself.
Yeah, I would say it's like a mix. I think, like with video, there's so many elements that are combined, and it's hard to kind of stay true to what the main message is, while also being flexible to try new things.
Yeah. Before we talk about, I know in the episode we're going to dive deeper into authenticity and what that really means. But before we do that, I just want us to, like, talk some tactics a bit, and before we start, we move on to talking about top level and then other stuff too. And the question I ask is, if someone is just starting out, right? I'm sold on the idea of video. I believe that, okay, it's important, and I want to take my next step, right? I want to do something like what's the first step you should take?
Say, if you're just starting in video, and the first step.
If someone is just starting with video, what's the first step you should take?
Gotcha. I say the first step you should take in understanding, you know, video, and being able to incorporate video into your content, into whatever you're trying to, you know, to send out into the world digitally, is really hone in on the story, and really try to keep the story and not anything else, you know. And story doesn't necessarily mean, you know, a tale or like a fairy tale or just something that's kind of an event that happens, but more so the story slash message. So making sure that, you know, you are very, intentional with the message that you're trying to deliver in the way that you want to deliver it. So I'd say for the people who are starting out, make it as simple as possible. Create your story from the get-go that makes sense, that isn't too distracting, that isn't too fancy, that isn't too all these things, and just make sure that the skeletal structure is actually there before you start building and adding more to it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah, now you earlier on you talked about one of the biggest mistakes you see content creators make is not being authentic, not being their true self. Instead of trying to be someone else, right? They're trying to put up a personnel of something else, right? So the question I want to ask is, how can someone make their videos feel more personal and authentic? Like I get it, right? But sometimes we want to be authentic, but at the end of the day, the output we get is exactly different from what we imagined.
I think for people to make their videos more authentic, to be able to really connect with their audience, they really have to be relatable. And I use this word a lot when explaining to clients, explaining to businesses on strategy calls, is being able to be as relatable as possible. So if you really boil it down, and if you think about what a video is basically a message that you're delivering to somebody or a group of people with some kind of, at least hopefully, some kind of value that you want to convey. And so it's much like a conversation. It's like basically having a talk with somebody about something that you either did, something that you believe in, an event that occurred, something that is meaningful to you, or even just simply things about you. And so the way that you are able to reach that person in that conversation is by being relatable. And by that, I mean, finding common things about you and that person to be able to have that person understand and empathize with you, even if it's not something that they do or a hobby that they have. It's a feeling that you're able to give, that they're able to understand. It's a word that you, or a slur of words that you speak, that they're also able to understand. So it's almost like communication. It's a game. It's almost like a dance. You basically want to be as relatable as possible by bridging all the gaps that you can with the audience member who's looking at your video and yourself who's creating the video.
Yeah. Just to nudge you a bit, so you go a bit deeper on that. You talked about being relatable. So what would you say are some of off the top storytelling techniques or frameworks that a brand or someone could use to every time they want to create content to be more relatable?
Yeah, that's a great question. To be more relatable, you really have to understand your audience, and that means really researching and understanding what kind of person they are, what things they like, where they spend their time, who they like to spend their time with, who's in their circle, what do they do on their free time, what do they do on their busy times, really getting into the weeds of everything about their audience to be able to try to imagine this persona of somebody who they're speaking to in their videos. And so it takes a lot of research, I think, is what I'm trying to say in the end, to be able to create either a script or a message that is understandable by the other person. So again, kind of being back to that relatableness, is you really have to understand, the type of person you're talking to and how they're able to understand what message you're trying to convey.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very, really important. I think for one of my key takeaways from this talk so far is the fact that I think much of the personal branding with video happens on the drawing board rather than filming the video.
Exactly. Yeah. The thing I like to say is everything should happen in pre-production, meaning what pre-production is the writing of it, the scripting of it, the thought process behind it, the creativity behind it, before you even hit record. And I think that's where a lot of people miss it, is that they start record and then they ramble and they try to make a message out of it. And then they have a tough time creating that authenticity and that relatability in their final post-production process.
Yeah. I would love for you to share an example of a brand or creator who has transformed their presence using video.
Sure. I would say there's a number of people. There's at least the people that I look up to. A lot are like Edward Lee. Let's see, from Edward Lee Films. He's a Seattle-based creator who does desk setups, videography, photography, tips, and lifestyle kind of content on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Let's see, there's probably another one off the top of my head would be Gordon Lee, who manages Lee Visuals, I think, out in Arizona, Tempe, I think.
I didn't realize.
He runs a media. I'm sorry?
Are they brothers?
No, no, no.
Because you mentioned Edward Lee and then Gordon Lee.
Gordon Lee. Yeah, they're spelled differently, actually.
Okay.
Edward Lee, Lee, and then Gordon Lee is Ly.
Okay.
Right. It's close. But Gordon Lee, he runs a media agency in Arizona, and he does a lot of content as well with video. And he's boosted his following like crazy from creating videos that are relatable to media agencies and other business owners, much like myself.
Yeah, yeah. I think my audience can go check those guys out to see, what they are really doing with video on socials and the other platforms you mentioned, like YouTube.
Definitely. Yeah. Another person I would recommend too is Ryan Kao, Kao. He's a phenomenal cinematographer, very talented, creative. He's actually based out of Portland, Oregon, from the same city that I'm from, but he moved down to LA recently within the last couple of years and has been creating really cool stuff, but also does, a good amount of videography for his own for himself, for his channel. Definitely worth a check.
Yeah. Thank you so much for those recommendations. Yeah, now we've talked about things. You shared some tips on how creators can be relatable in their content, and one of the things you talked about is production is way easier if we get the pre-production right.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'd love for us to talk about strategy and execution. So what's more important? What would you say is more important, quality or consistency when building a brand with video?
I think that's an age-old debate now.
Yeah, it never gets old.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic still to this day about what matters more. In my professional opinion, I believe quality matters over consistency. However, you cannot get to a place of quality without being consistent. And so I think both of them work hand in hand in a unique way. Mm-hmm. And I would say, that's kind of not a direct answer to say that, I'm choosing one over the other, but I think both really do matter. It's just being able to get to the quality that you are satisfied with and that people can recognize as is good quality, not poor quality, but also remaining consistent in those two.
Yeah. And a follow-up question I want to ask regarding that is, how does this like reflect in your work? How do you know when like the quality is like it's good enough? There's always a lot of things you could always do to improve the work. How do you know when it's like, okay, this is good? Let's put it out there.
That's a tough one because as an artist, as a video creator and photographer and videographer and creative entrepreneur, I'm my own worst critic. So, the quality is always getting better, but I do know that there's even not a compromise, but a balance within myself that I have to decide that, this is good enough or this is great enough. This is my quality assurance kind of process where I believe that, this checks it and is good for me to be able to publish it. And that usually takes, a large amount of revisions, a large amount of time, just consistently looking it over and over and over again to really decide if it's truly up to par with my, my quality. But it's almost hard to say that there's a definitive way. I think we get too caught up sometimes in is this good enough, where we just have to basically put it out, and putting it out is good enough. And so, I hate to not give a direct answer, but the artist in me kind of struggles with that itself.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. Yeah. The question I want to ask is, you're a photographer, you're a videographer, you like creating quality and polished content is basically, what you do professionally. So the question I want to ask is, there's a type of video and content out there that it's just raw, unedited. It's just someone talking to the camera, to the video, and then posting it online. So the question I want to ask is, how do we balance between polished versus raw content?
I would say the way to balance it is really just choosing what is your visual style. I think a lot of people tend to, go and slide really heavy one way and the others go another way. Like, for example, a good example of this is Sam Solik. Sam Solik is a bodybuilder creator.
I know you.
Who does
raw.
Yeah, Very raw, very raw. It's just organic. It's just him, and that is his brand. That is his visual identity, and it works for him. And that's brought him success. That's obviously brought him, the consistency in how he's able to create that much content. And then you see, videographers like myself who polish things really, really to a point. And that's just the visual style, and that's what I like to create, and that's what I like to do. But it doesn't always have to be that. And I think people get so caught up in trying to make it too polished that they forget that sometimes the most raw is good, and again, kind of going back to one of the answers I gave in the beginning, is the story is everything. As long as your story is there and it's easily communicated and understandable, it doesn't matter how polished your content is. People will not remember that. They'll remember the story.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, so and I think all the questions I keep asking, it keeps taking us back to the beginning, that we have to get the story, get the messaging clear first, and then the means and the method we use to deliver the message, it becomes easier when the message is clear.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Currently, there are so many platforms out there with each of them have their own different video. There's LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and so many. So the question I want to ask is, what platforms do you think someone should focus on if they want to do this personal brand thing with video?
Question is, what platform would I recommend? What
platforms should someone focus on first for personal brand growth?
I see. I think you got to just choose one. I think obviously each platform calls for a unique audience. LinkedIn has more business-centered folks on there, although it's kind of becoming a little bit, a lot more personal brand focused as far as educational, informational stuff. Instagram is a wide net, so all kinds of content live on there. So it's really hard to, I think that one is a little bit more forgiving in a sense that you can kind of test the waters out. Facebook is more for the older crowd, a little bit less polished, more kind of up to date, life updates kind of thing. TikTok is more obviously creative, very, very flashy, kind of dopamine hitting videos, short form, that just all it aims is to entertain in a sense, even with some being infographic and informational, educational, which kind of has a little bit of an existence on that platform. But I think for folks, I definitely recommend Instagram as the first kind of place. But, before I even go into that whole thing, I think just choosing one platform and really understanding it completely to be able to just try and make the content for that is really my best piece of advice there. I think Instagram, you can kind of get caught up in the likes, the shares, the comments, and all that, and try to beat the algorithm, like everyone likes to say. It's an opportunity to see, I think, what works, what doesn't. But I would say if you want more structure, I would lean into probably LinkedIn, Facebook, LinkedIn for businesses, Facebook for general people on there, and then TikTok for more younger crowd, younger folks.
I think again, it's back to the messaging. Who are we trying to send the message to, right?
Exactly. Exactly. It's understanding the audiences of each platform and really which one is. Yeah, really understanding which platform has your audience.
Yeah. You've seen a lot of you see a lot of terrible videos, and then you also see a lot of great videos and a lot of great creators and all that. So the question I want to ask is, what's one small change or shift someone could do in their video content, whether pre-production, production, or post-production, that can make a really big impact?
There's actually a lot of things that come to mind with that question. I think to touch on the biggest one, I would say back to one of my original answers of pre-production, just focus heavily on pre-production. There's so much worth in being able to construct a full story before you go out and you actually create, because that's what filmmaking is. That's what video is. If you look at movies, they script everything out, and that's what makes movies so crazy good, is because everything is written to a T before they actually ever start casting or creating a crew. It's literally a story in a book or a set of pages that is created first, and then they're able to create, everything else from that. So I would say focus heavily on pre-production, on the story, on the actual main frame of it, and then focus on other things. But but there's so many little things that you can do in post-production. You can really like talk about like audio engineering or sound design to include more, elements in your storytelling, transitions, have it be more intentional versus just overlaying a film burn effect or whatever that, transition packs are out there. And in production, being continuity in your content, so making sure that the set is the same every single time, or at least how it should make sense to every single shot that you're trying to capture.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I could go down a long list, but we'll be here forever.
Yeah. Next question I do have is now, of course, there's so many things we could do and all that, but for some persons, they make video content and they feel their content is not exactly on point, right? It's not exactly looking like the way they want it to look, and all the other technical aspects of making video and all that. They feel like it's not there technically. Now, we're not talking about the messaging or the storytelling. We're just talking about the technical aspect and all that. So the question I have is, how can we make our videos more visually compelling? Yeah,
More visually compelling. To really stick to the visual component of your videos and trying to give more advice on there, I would say being able to focus on coloring and lighting is the main thing, and coloring comes after lighting. So lighting is probably one thing I would focus on if I were to go back in time and devote more time understanding, more investment in, good lighting resources and equipment. And just like more testing with that, because lighting really does do a difference in your visuals. It can showcase, how much intention you put into each shot. And I think really draws out the drama that you're able to create with your cinematic shots.
So what you're recommending is that we find a way to get our lighting straight, and then it's going to level up our video game.
Yeah, I would say, and lighting doesn't have to mean, by that, I don't mean that you have to include a dramatic lighting in your scene or make everything cinematic, quote unquote, like everybody likes to say. It's more just like being intentional with the lighting, like understanding that you're lighting something, you're lighting a subject, and making sure that subject looks accurate to the detail, like as if they were in person, and making sure it doesn't look like crappy iPhone footage if you're going for that look or whatever. Just being more intentional with the shots and making sure that they exist for a reason. Everything that is captured in your camera, in your frame, is there for a reason.
Yeah. The thing I want to ask is, what's an underused, underrated that you see most people are not talking about, storytelling techniques that more people should try?
What was that last part?
I say, what are underused or storytelling technique that more people should try?
More techniques in storytelling that people should try is probably having a kind of arc point. And by arc, I mean almost like a climax, like you would any other kind of story that's being told on a book or a fairy tale. It's like there's always usually like a problem that's presented, some kind of challenge that a problem that's being presented with a character involved. Doesn't have to be an actual person, but a character. Could be company, could be an object, could be whatever, that goes through challenges to be able to seek the answer, being the climax, getting to the climax, and then finding some kind of resolve and lesson to be learned after. I think those are the best kind of tips I can tell for storytelling, because it leaves you not only with a feeling that you were told that you were moved, emotionally, but also something practical that you can use that's worth learning.
If the question I have is, if someone has a strong personal brand in text or images, how do they successfully transition into video? Right? How do they move a bit into video?
If they have a strong personal brand via text and whatnot, I would say to transition into video, you really have, or imagery, I see. I would say find elements that are told in those things, of whether it's text, like you said, or photography or imagery, and find elements that are unique in those things that you've already sent out into the world and try to capture it in video. And that sounds like a little abstract to say, but essentially an example that I could give that probably explains this a lot better is like, take a graphic design, post that you as a personal brand have created, with quotes from Twitter or from Instagram threads, and understand like what feelings those things emote and they give off, and be able to replicate that with video. So like video can be broken down very simply into emotions that you feel, just looking at something, you can tell what emotion that, videographer or filmmaker wanted to give off. And so just trying to kind of mimic that and see what themes are common in the elements that you've already created and try to bring that into video. So if it's a lot of, I don't even know off the top of my head, some beach imagery with like calming words that you put out, or like a message about, being more involved in being present with your life to heal some mental, struggles that you have, like being able to relive that same emotion through either talking head videos, through regular B-roll videos with just now voiceovers with the message that you want to give, but all that kind of is intertwined and aligned with the brand that you've already created.
Yeah. Thanks for that. So, if we're already doing images and video, we could add images and text. We could do voiceovers on top of images that are like videos, and we could also move on to videos and all that. I think you said that the core focus should be the emotional connection we want people to feel from watching the video.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's all about the emotion you want to give, because that's what impacts people the most, apart from learning something on their feet from a video. It's really about what emotion you're able to leave with that person after they've watched the video that you've created.
Yeah. Before I do have a couple of rapid fire questions that I would ask, and then we'll conclude the show. But before I do that, do you have is there anything that you'd love for my audience to know about personal branding with video that you feel like I have not asked?
Oh, it's a good question. I think, there's a whole slew of things that we can talk about personal branding, but I think you touched on the most important ones. The only other thing I would have to say is that I think personal branding, a lot of people put a lot of pressure into making sure that it fits one bucket, but at the end of the day, personal branding can look like a bunch of things, but also, can be flexible and look like a bunch of other things or one thing later down the road. So I think the best thing that I tell people about when they're exploring personal branding is test out what you actually like and then stick to what actually works.
Oh, so at the beginning phase, we should just be testing out stuff, and then eventually when stuff start working, we then start doing more of what works.
Yeah. That's like a cliche thing to say, but it really does. I mean, like, that's the answer right there.
No, like most of the things we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. Most of the things sound cliche because they're important, and there's something that we have to keep reminding ourselves. Isn't that why they're very common mainstream and all that?
Yeah. No, good point. Very good point.
Thank you for that tip. That at least it's really spiced up the questions I've asked before. The rapid fire questions I want to ask, a couple of them here, but some of them are thoughtful, some of them are a bit deep, right? But some of them are just fun questions. So and the first question is, if you could only make one video about your life, what would be in it? Yeah, you did make a video, but
gotcha. If I could only include one thing in my video,
if you could only make one video about your life, what would be in it?
It would be about creating impact through everyone that I meet.
Wow. Creating impact through networking and connection, relationships and all that.
Absolutely.
What's a common piece of video branding advice you disagree with?
Common piece of video advice that I disagree with would be, that's a good one. I think I would disagree with making every single video in a perfect one. I think there's room for imperfectness in your videos, and that just shows how human you are with people, and I think that alone gives you a little bit more of an advantage than people who are trying to appear perfect. I'm glad you finally picked the side. Right. I was expecting you were going to answer the question like a diplomat. You're like, well, it's like that's good.
But I'm glad you picked this side.
That's good. I like that.
Imagine a future where AI can generate perfect videos for people. How would personal branding change?
I actually believe that personal branding is going to become better, because just like we saw with ChatGPT and everything right now that's happening with AI, helping enhance videos, the people who are creating from the soul, people who are creating without AI or with minimal help from AI and are using it only as a tool to enhance versus people who are using AI as a crutch. Those kinds of people, the former kind of people, are actually going to shine more because in a sea of a bunch of people who are making AI content videos or will be making AI videos completely, it's going to be so easy to discern from the people who are making truly compelling videos. And I think it's only going to make the important, valuable things rise up to the surface more.
Yeah, that's right. I feel like when there's a lot of noise and static, and the moment you get to pick up a signal that has people talking, and it just sounds out from the background noise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The next one I would ask is, if you could steal the video skills of any famous creator, whose would you take and why?
If I could take the video skills from any creator, I would probably take Ryan Calves. I think his video skills are incredible. His cinematography is epic. Lighting is insane. And yeah, I would love to steal his, I would love to use his skills for sure. Learn his skills.
Yeah, okay. The last question I have is, what's a bad video you made that actually helped you grow?
I'd say a bad video I made that actually has helped me grow would be probably content from a dentist office that I used to work for. Definitely made awful videos, and I look back at those and cringe at them, but I do know that they made me better because I learned a lot from that experience.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I just before we conclude everything, and then I would love to ask you a couple of questions about the things we discussed, so the audience can leave with a couple of practical takeaways. The first question is, what's one quick video experiment every listener should try today?
What's one video experiment that I think everyone should try?
Yeah.
I would say experiment with lighting. Again, lighting is key. It'll really help with a lot of things, lighting, audio, and storytelling.
Okay, lighting, audio, and storytelling. Okay. The next question I wanted to ask, I don't know if that answer you give relates to the question, but you get to see. What are the three must have elements in a personal brand video?
Top 3 elements, I'd say, in a personal branding video. I would say energy. So what is the kind of energy that's being felt that you're trying to convey? If it's like high pace, if it's slow, if it's elegant, graceful, etc. So I'd say energy. I'd say also probably the commentary, like what's being said, the actual voice of what the person is saying, like the message essentially, but through the actual language of what's being said. And then 3, I would say probably the emotion. Again, back to the emotion of what they're kind of laying or allowing their audience members to understand at the end of their video.
So if I got that right, it's energy, message, and emotion.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for that masterclass on personal branding with me. Where should people follow you to see, to learn more and about your work?
Yeah, so I'm available pretty much on all platforms: Instagram, Facebook, or Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook at Ricardo Topete. So it's my name, RICARDO Ricardo Topete.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. It's been a great pleasure having you on the podcast, and I'm really excited that I got to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me, Wisdom. This was great. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. That's it for today's episode of Wisdom Journey. If you found this insightful, helpful, and you learned a lot from this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on your respective podcast listening platform. It really helps other persons discover the show. Yeah, keep creating, keep learning, and most importantly, keep sharing your journey. You never know who needs your wisdom today. You see what I did there? Until next time, stay inspired and keep going.